Hi, welcome back to CS170. We're in week 9, continuing on with Excel. So this is covering a couple of different capabilities or functions within Excel. Some of these I hit in prior mini lectures. So here we are with sorting. And sorting, as you might know from prior experience, is in the case of letters, alphabetizing it, right? You can sort it ascending or descending. You can sort numerically, high to low, low to high. And yeah, so you can do things like this, take all the entries in the row that you want to sort. You can choose like a primary and secondary key to do your sorting. When you do things like with data, filtering and whatnot, you can do sorting with that too. So I kind of showed this to you before where you have this, right? So here, you remember you can do these selections here. You can take this and only show pants, let's say, or you show all of them, or you do sorting here, okay? Maybe I want to look at let's see, sort the price from low to high. So then I'll change it to this, right? And move it around like so, okay? So one thing to notice is like, you remember the formulas that were here, those formulas will adjust accordingly, even though I've sorted it, okay? So you can see it's still corresponding with the row here, okay? Even though I took the values and sorted it one way or the other. All right, so this is B3, C3. Let me sort it the other way now. Still B3, C3, but you can see the value is different. It's 86 here, right? And that's because the formula stay attached to here, even though you're sorting the values, okay? And that makes sense because you're taking these same inputs here to come up with this value here, okay? So, all right, you have things like accumulating, counting, max and min. So let me just demonstrate here. Okay. So let's say you want to do a sum of all these total due here. So I can do this, right? And that would be all the values that I want to sum. Do the this kind of something that we do later on, but I'm gonna do this now. And you can see these couple of different things here. Okay. Okay. You can do some charts here, totals. Okay. So you can see a sum over here. Okay. And you can see on the top at H7 where it did the sum here. I can do an average. Okay, for the average of the total due. These other ones don't really make much sense, but right. So yeah, you got 4 lines here, which you can kind of tell already. Yeah, so basically these probably here would make the most sense, like the sum and the average, okay? I can do something right now, which is something that we'll also be covering later. You can see my little function here, right? So I'm calling this sum function. Remember earlier lecture, I talked about all the different functions that come built into Excel. So here, now you can see it tells you, well, you have to have some numbers in here for it to sum up, right? So how do I get those numbers? Well, here's some numbers here, right? I can take this one. I can say I want to add this one. Something like this, right? Now you can see it's doing H3 colon H6. That means it's taking that cell range, okay? Now I don't have to do it that way. So let me back this up here. Let's say I want to do, you can't see on my keyboard, but I'm holding the control, right? But you can also type it in manually. I just happen to do this a lot, so I just do this with my mouse. But I'm holding the control on my keyboard. I'm selecting H3, H5, and H6 and see what it looks like here. It's explicitly listing each of the cells, H3, H5, H6, and then I close paren, and then there's your total, okay? So there's a number of ways to do this. You can specify what goes in here in terms of a range of cells, or you can, click on each of the cells individually that you want to sum up, okay? But that's how sums work, okay? Or you can say it's accumulating, right? And, same thing for the max and min, right? If I want to get the max here, so I can do equals max like that. And then here's my range of cells that I want to check the max on. And then that's my max, right? Hopefully that's right, 77, 76, right? That looks right. Okay, so let me clear this out again. And then likewise, if I want to do a min, do this here, boom, just like that. Okay, you can see the min up here, and then you can see the range H3 to H6. So see here, max, min, sum, the count, and the average. You kind of saw me do the average before, but let me do the average again. So there's average, and I'm gonna take this range again, and then there's the average, right? And you can see average. Note when you do the formula, you have to start with an equal sign. So it's equal, average, and then you put in the range into that function, okay? Kind of similar to how you do the JavaScript functions. Okay, so you have the function and you're going to pass in your arguments, and then out comes the output, right? There's some more counting stuff here. This is the standard one, the one that probably a lot of people use, and you just do a count here, right? So in this case, you're saying, oh, the count that contains a number, right? So let me see here, what has some numbers here? Well, this is like, oh, okay. Well, we can do this one here. So equals count. And take that as my range. And then like that, okay? So that's telling me that there's 4 here, which you kind of saw before when I did that selection here. And then I went into the analysis, quick analysis mode here. And then we were here. Here we go. So we did the count here, and it was the kind of same thing. It showed you 4, right? So same thing. This is the same count actually, okay? Later on, we're going to do a count if it equals to something, which kind of is useful. I think if you want to do a count, you're looking for something in particular. What's that count? Count A counts the number of non-empty cells. Now, this is where I was saying when you do the clear content, this makes a difference here. Okay, there's a difference between a blank, like with a space bar, blank versus like a really empty, where you clear the contents type of cell. Okay. And yeah, there we go, count blank. Right. So you want to look for blanks. This is your count blank here, right? And then this is the count if. This is what I was saying before. If you want to find something that has a particular value. So let's actually try this here. Let's do the count if here. So it equals count if. And so the nice thing about doing these functions here in Excel is that once you select on it, you can see you can click on this and it kind of gives you some help here, but it also tells you what it expects as input. In this case, it wants a range and the criteria here. So what's the range? Well, I'm going to want to look at this. That's my range. And then I hit a comma, and then it kind of tells you, see, it kind of bolds it up here, kind of tells you, well, the next thing you want to put in is a criteria. What's my criteria? Well, it just happens I only have something that's interesting here would be the quantity of 2, right? There's like 2 rows with 2. So I'm going to say 2 like that. And then it'll tell me that it found 2 rows that have the value 2 there. 2 there. Let's say for the sake of argument, I'm going to look for the value 3. So let me do a 3 here. And then it tells you there's only 1 row that has a 3 in it. Okay. Not that really that interesting since there's only 4 rows here, but you get the idea. Okay. So I think the Countif is something that you'll use more often. You actually see that in your assignment for Excel using this Countif criteria. So pay attention on using that. Okay, and you don't have to remember, just like with the sum, you don't have to select a range like this. You can do like a control, click, click, click. And so any sort of like grouping of cells that you happen to select and say, okay, what's the count of whatever value, like you're looking for a 2 or something like that. And it'll find it there. Okay. So let me see here. I think I'm going to be able to get through this into one lecture so we can finish it. So we don't have to do another lecture on this part. There's still going to be another lecture after this, but that will cover the remainder part for chapter 13. But within this PowerPoint, I think I can get through these last few in the same lecture here. So I did sort of like these counting examples here. This one I just did, right? Tells you how many of the stuff has like a 2 in it. Okay. Count the number of non-empty cells and blanks. That's fine. Not too often we're going to use these. If you're doing some data quality type of stuff, you might be looking for this. This one might be interesting. So let's try this one, right? So instead of just saying, oh, I want to see how many have a value of 2, maybe I want to see less than or equal to 2. So instead of doing a couple of different Countifs to say, oh, 1 and 2 and whatever, I'm just going to say less than or equal to 2, right? So this one kind of interesting. So let's see if we can do this one. Equals Countif, Countif, and then let's see the range here. And then boom, criteria, right? Then I'm going to say, let's go for less than or equal to 2. And then I close paren, right? That's a proper function there, right? And then we have 3, which is pretty good, right? Because you have a 2, you have a 2, and you have a 1. So that's less than or equal to 2, okay? Let me see here. Oh, so this one's interesting too, where you can build it up, where you have the greater than, just like up here, you have less than or equal, but you're gonna make it more dynamic, meaning I can punch in a value in the B15 here. So let me do this. And let me just mention this. This is basically the equivalent of doing concatenation, right? Or adding the 2 strings together, okay? You know, you saw this when we did the alerts in JavaScript, we did the plus sign, right? So now you have this string here, and then you have whatever string is in B15, and you do an ampersand to concatenate them together into your criteria. In our case, we're going to use D7, okay? So I'm going to take this. I'm just going to adjust this a little bit. It's still Countif. I'm still looking at the same range, but now I'm going to do ampersand sign, and I'm just going to click on D7 like that, and we're done. Okay, so now there's nothing there because I didn't actually put anything to look for, but let me put in a 2 now, and I get 3. I don't like this formatting, so I'm going to change this format. Where's my format here? Format. I just want this to be just a regular number, and I want the decimal place to be, just that decimal place to be 0, just like that. 1, right? So 1 is 1 because you only have a 1 here. 2, there's 3 of them. There's 1, 2, 3. If I do a 3 here, I get 4. Boom, 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 right? It really doesn't change if I go up to 4. Same thing. 5, 0. Okay, so all of these work, and it's basically doing the concatenation, which I think is the most important part here. Your countif still works the same, the range still works the same. You're gonna do this little bit of like concatenation here with the ampersand sign, and this allows you so the people using the sheet don't have to go in there and change the formulas all the time. All they have to do is type in a value into a cell, and then it just automatically adjusts accordingly. Like so. So I think this is a pretty useful thing for you to know how to do. Okay. In fact, I'm going to just leave this on here so people can see it later on when they play around with the sheet. Okay. So asking the question if. So if here, if the total amount due is greater than $50, there's a $10 shipping cost. Otherwise, there's a $5 shipping cost, right? So this is the general format, right? And you'll see this when you do the if. So it's if, whatever is the question. If it's true, it's within this comma here. If it's false, then you have this, right? It's almost like your if conditional in JavaScript, right? So in this case, it's checking if this is H6 is greater than 50. If it is, I'm going to charge $10 shipping. Otherwise, I'm going to charge $5 shipping. Okay. And it applies it all the way down across all of these cells here. And I actually happen to have done that here. This is why I added this column here. Okay. So if you look, I did the if, and then if I said H3, which is this column, is greater than 50, then I charge $10. Otherwise, I charge $5. So I put that into this sheet over here. That's why I had this already. Okay. So that's this if or conditional type of processing. Okay. Just remember this part here. Ask the question. The first comma is the true result. And the second comma is the false result. What are you going to do for that? In this case, we said if it's true, you're going to charge $10. If it's false, you're going to charge $5. Okay. So I guess I can't break this out into another lecture. I can do another lecture for charts. So the last thing I'm going to do with the if conditional is you can do multiple with this, right? So you can do multiple things with this, asking with the and or not, right? And then you have the question of if here. So how do you do that? It's exactly like this, right? So there's this and here, and then you're going to put parentheses around it, right? But if you look at this overall, this actually fills out the first part of the if. So this part still kind of works the same. So the if, this part is the question that you're asking. And then whether it's true or false, you're still going to still have the second comma, this first comma here and the second comma here, okay? All you're doing is just kind of making multiple criteria. And how do you do that? You use the and in here. So you're saying B8 greater than or equal to 2, and C8 greater than 20, and D8 less than 20. So you remember this from when we were doing like the Venn diagrams or when we were doing like the web searches, and you were saying, what is and, right? And it's even on your conditionals when you're doing JavaScript, okay? So when you do your conditionals checking, all three of these checks have to be true for this whole expression to evaluate the true, okay? And then it asks the question, hey, what's the difference with or and not, right? Well, have a think for yourself and say, what happens if I change that to or, okay? So yeah, well, I was thinking about making that extra credit, but I'm just going to tell you anyway. right? So if I leave this as an or, what does that mean? All it means is like just one of these things have to be true, and then the whole thing evaluates to true. So and means all three of these equal to true, for it to evaluate the true, or means either this is true, or this is true, or this is true for the whole thing to become evaluate to true. Okay. And then what happens with not, right? All not means is like it's the opposite of whatever comes back, right? So let's say C8 is greater than 50, comes back as true, then making a not there just makes it flip around to be false, and vice versa. If C8 greater than 50 is false, then the not just flips it around and makes it true. Okay. So that's these different types of things using and or not. And like I said, it's analogous to what you might be doing with your conditional logic in JavaScript, right? You guys know that from your assignments, I hope. And then you have your Venn diagrams that you did for your web searches in part 1 of this course. So that's what this is. So I'm going to stop here. And then the next lecture will be the last point to cover these points on charts here. Okay. All right. Let's see. And